Hello, and thanks for joining me on the One-Handed Watchmaker. Today I'm going to be working on my project SNE, Seiko Tuna Can Homage. Unlike the actual SNE, this one's going to be an automatic with a ubiquitous NH35 movement in it. Pretty easy to work with. This nice textured dial, though I did choose some Marine Master style hands, which I like a little bit more than those that came on it. I did get the rubber strap, but I actually chose this Garmin Phoenix style canvas strap, which looks pretty good. The first thing I'm going to do is put on a Seiko logo to the dial. I perhaps could have chosen a white one to go with the white indices on the dial, but I preferred the black. It's a little more stealth looking. I think it goes with the theme of the build. And I think it turned out pretty well also, despite the textured dial, which made it a little bit hard to fully apply. Looks pretty nice. This is probably my 6th build, though I've modified a couple of other watches, putting new dials and hands on them. Over the period of time that I've been doing this, I've been collecting the tools I need, and this movement holder is one of the most valuable. Here I'm advancing the movement until the very moment that the date changes over in the window, marking midnight, and that's how I'll know where to put both the hour and the minute hands when I go to install those. When I first started this project, it was the putting the hands on watch that I felt was going to be the biggest challenge, and in some ways it is. They're tiny, tiny parts. I recently told my fiance that I did not realize that so much of watchmaking involved crawling around on your hands and knees trying to find something 3 millimeters long on a hardwood floor. And though I've done it 5 or 6 times, I suppose, and I am getting a little better at it, it is still sort of an exercise in patience and, well, good vision sometimes. And you can see my Cyclops headpiece that helps me to see better what I'm doing. Highly recommended, particularly if you're advancing in years as I am. Give it a little wiggle and make sure that it's where it needs to be. One of the first things I learned in this hobby is the importance of good tools. And for installing hands, among other things, I found that these plastic-tipped tweezers are really the way to go. They don't mark the hands, nor do they mark the dial nearly as easily as the stainless steel tweezers that I had gotten with my first watchmaking kit. They're also, of course, anti-magnetic, which is the bane of the watchmaker's existence, magnetism, that is. These ones work pretty well. Okay, and now with the minute hand installed, it's time for what I believe is truly the most challenging part of any of these sorts of watch builds, and that's the installation of the seconds hand. I have yet to find a trick for doing this. It's mostly just a matter of patience, uh, the steadiest hands I can muster, and perseverance. Typically, I'll try it 15 or 20 times and take a little break and try it a few more times, and very often it just falls into place. I have used a tool that is sold by DIY Watch Club that works very well on a standard 28.5 millimeter dial, and would have worked with this except for the chapter ring which surrounds the dial. But in this instance, it holds the seconds hand too far away from the pinion to be of any use. I recommend it for most SKX style watch mod applications. It's a really fancy little, I believe, $20 tool, which also functions as a movement holder. In this case, it was just a matter of trial and error, and as you can see, so far, only error. There's this very small gap between the post that turns the seconds hand and the outside of the pinion. And sometimes the post for the seconds hand will fall into that gap instead of falling over the post that it's supposed to fall on. You'll find having a well-lit and clutter-free workspace is important, particularly if you're as prone to flinging second hands across the desk as I am. I'm not going to be too proud to admit that often in a build like this, I'll buy two sets of hands just because I know that I will fling at least one of them into some space where I'll never see it again. And at $4 a set on AliExpress, that's usually okay. Whoops, oh, there went. Ah, found it. And success. That's a good feeling, I have to admit. Oh, and here was a problem that I had with this build. The second hand, in one of its voyages across my desk had bent slightly at the tip and would hang up on the minute hand. I learned this trick from a fellow YouTuber whose name I unfortunately can't remember. The face protector for removing hands without damaging your face, very, very thin piece of plastic that will fit between the hands and allow you to position them, and in this instance, straighten the second hand so that it would not interfere with the minute hand or get hung up on it. You can see here I'm using it to tilt the minute hand a little bit further down towards the dial. And it's not so stiff that it will flick it off into the ether, but is enough to make a little movement, a little adjustment while the watch hands are on the movement. And you can see that the alignment is a little bit better there. Now it gives the hands a tour of the dial to make sure that nothing's hanging up on the indices, that the hands aren't interfering with each other. Make sure everything lines up properly. And date flips over right where it's supposed to. So the hands seem to be right where I want them. It's worth blowing off any little tiny bits of dust that you can find before you worry about installing the movement into a watch case. I have before, in my haste, put the movement into the watch case only to find dust after I've buttoned up the whole project and had to dismantle the entire thing to clean it out. So I've learned to be a little more patient and try to clean things as I go. Now, at this point, I want to point out that you will have noticed that the watch crown was on the winding stem during that whole hand installation. And that is because I installed those hands as a second option. As I said, I went for the Marine Master style hands. But I did want to post part of the video where I cut and adjusted the winding stem, which I find to be the second most challenging part of any watch build, and I'm not sure why I struggle with it as much as I do. So I've removed the winding stem that comes with the movement, the one with the blue crown, and I'm installing the crown that came with the case. This winding stem is going to be far too long for this case, and I'll have to cut it down. I found that having a good pin vise is a very, very useful tool. Reinstall it into the movement, give it a little twist to make sure that it goes in properly. And then I measure using my digital micrometer, which I got on AliExpress for $7. But the hint is to push the crown in as you're measuring it to ensure that you're not leaving the crown too long. Now, I like using these wooden pegs to try and remove the winding stem, but I find sometimes that they are too soft. And so I actually use a metal watch band remover. It works just fine. Now, I've cut the winding stem with the wire cutters that you see there, and I'm using a piece of 220 grit sandpaper to round the end of the winding stem so that I can put it back onto the winding crown. But I use a piece of Rhodeco to ensure that there's no leftover shards or dust of metal in there. And it looks as if it fits pretty well. I have some silicone grease that I've used to lubricate the small gasket here, which actually, of course, improves with water resistance, but makes the case back screw on and stay screwed on more smoothly and tightly. And there she is. This again is the Garmin style watch band that clips on to the spring bars. I found some heavy duty spring bars that hold it very securely. And it's a good look with this case and dial. I'm not a camouflage kind of guy, but it's perfect with this build. I really like it. And there it is. And a good looking watch. Not one I'd wear every day. I like it a little bit more stainless steel color, but this one's turned out really well. Thank you for watching. And if you have any comments, please leave them below. And if you're so inclined, please leave me a like or even subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.